Hello everyone. So in today's video, I'm gonna be reading the book Unwanted. So I already gave it a description of the book. And now I am gonna be reading a few chapters of the book. So I'm gonna be reading, one second. So I'm gonna be reading, let me get to it. So chapter 1, The Purge. It's a very short chapter, so I'm gonna read then chapter 2, Wanted. And then do that for those are short chapters, but I just want to get some reading done for you guys, or maybe I could read a little more. So let's get started. Hold on one second while I get ready. Just start reading. Oops, sorry about the wait. Okay, everyone, I am ready. Okay, The Unwanteds by Lisa McMahon. Passing the acknowledgements. Okay, The Purge. There was a hint of wind coming over the top of the stone walls and through the barbed wire sky on the day Alex still was to be purged. Alex waited in the dusty comments of Quill and felt the light breeze cooling the sweat on his upper lip. His twin brother Aaron stood beside him, the parents behind, and all around the entire community of Quill watched and waited. The bland looks of sleeping fish on their faces. Mr. Stowe pressed his finger hard into Alex's back. A final poke in the kidneys, a last goodbye, Alex thought, or a warning not to run. Alex glanced at Aaron, whose face showed the tiniest emotion. Scared, was it? Or sad? Alex didn't know. The highest priest, Justine, her long white hair undisturbed despite the breeze, rose to her full height and observed the silent crowd. She began without introduction or ado, for a purge was neither exciting nor boring. It just was, as many things just were in Quill. There were nearly 50 13-year-olds this year. The people of Quill wanted to hear which of these teenagers had been marked as wanted or necessary, and by process of elimination, which of them remained to be purged. Alex scanned the group and their families around the giant half circle of the amphitheater. He knew some of them, not all. Alex's mind wandered as the high priest, Justine, announced first the names of the Wanteds, and he started only slightly as the high priest spoke Aaron's name. Aaron, who'd had nothing to worry about, sighed away in relief when he was among the 15 names called. Necessaries were next. 13 names were read. Alex Stowe was not one of those either, even though Alex knew that he was unwanted and had known ever since his parents had told him over breakfast when he was 10. The knowledge and 3 years of preparation weren't enough to stop the sweat that pricked his armpits now. It was down to a mere formality, unless there was a surprise, which there sometimes was. But it didn't matter. Everyone stood motionless until the final 20 names were called. Among the unwanted, Alex Stowe. Alex didn't move, though his heart fell like a cement block into his gut. He stared straight ahead as he'd seen the other Unwanteds do in the past years. His lip quivered for a moment, but he fought to still it. When the governors came over to him, he put his arms out for them to shackle with rusty iron bands. He made his eyes icy cold before he glanced over his shoulder at his parents, who remained unemotional. His father nodded slightly and finally took his finger out of Alex's back after the shackles were secure. That was a minor relief, but what did it matter now? Aaron snipped once quietly, catching Alex's attention in the silent amphitheater. The identical boys held a glance for a moment. Something like a jolt of energy passed between them, and then it was gone. Goodbye, Aaron whispered. Alex swallowed hard, held the stare a second more as the governors tugged at him to follow, and then broke the connection and went with the governors to the waiting bus. Sorry about that. That would take him to his death. And then Chapter 2, Wanted. Aaron still the wanted watched his father, Alex, brother. My God, I'm really sorry, guys. Okay, well, let's do Chapter 2. Aaron still the wanted watched his brother, Alex, board the rusty box of a bus. And then he turned his eyes to a formidable high priest, Justine. She retreated to her aging jeep-like vehicle flanked by two guards and her secretary, and they began the drive back up the dusty hill to the palace, leaving a trail of gray smoke and a sharp odor to linger on the heavy air. The rest of clothes slowly dispersed on foot. Murmurs surfaced and drifted through the crowd. Not about the purge, of course. That was already a cloudy memory for some. Instead, they spoke of their plans for the rest of the day, for the day of the purge was Quill's one holiday each year. All of the wanteds and most of the necessaries, except those who tended to the farm animals, were free to do as they pleased for the rest of it. Aaron knew what he would be doing. He turned to his mother and father and said, with a decisive air, "All set then?" Mrs. Stowe nodded primly, and the three of them followed the crowd down the dusty path that led to Quadrant 4, where they lived. "We'll finish making your uniform and get your things packed for university," she said. "Cut your hair too?" She looked at Mr. Stowe and asked, "I don't suppose we'll get the unwanted boys' clothes and shoes back, will we?" Mr. Stowe, who had once been quite handsome but now had curled up a bit from years of back-breaking work as a burrier, shook his head. "No? Well, that's a waste. Aaron could use them, the shoes at least. Wish I'd thought to take them before he left. I wouldn't want to wear them," Aaron said, and then he pinched his lips together before he said more. Still his mother narrowed her eyes and spoke softly, almost fearfully. "You'll do well to forget about him." Aaron kept silent for a moment, thinking. "You're right," he said finally. "It won't happen again." "See to it," said Mr. Stowe. After 15 minutes they had reached Quadrant 4, a residential square mile of tiny, identical houses planted closely together like rows of sweet corn. each house the color of the dry, cracked desert that surrounded it. The crowd of people split up now and weaved their way between the structures until they reached their own individual homes. Aaron and his parents nodded politely to their neighbors as they walked along. When Aaron saw a familiar couple around the same age as his parents walking home, he touched his mother's sleeve. "How odd," he said. "Isn't Mr. Ranger a milker?" "Yes," she said. "Why is he out and about instead of doing his job?" Aaron's eyes narrowed. He must have been given the day off this year because of the unwanted daughter. Did they know in advance, I wonder? She turned to Mr. Stowe. "Not that I heard." "That's a blow," Mr. Stowe said. Wait, hold on. He yawned as they neared their house number 5443. "They'll be cut off from reproducing now." This was their second offense. Mr. Stowe wrinkled his nose. "They'll be completely ridiculed by the Unwanteds for poor production." Mrs. Stowe gave her husband a disappointed glance. "You'll be careful what you say," she snapped, "lest you forget we've a wanted in your presence now." Aaron raised his chin slightly as his parents stood aside at the front door, allowing the boy to center before them for the first time. "Yes, be careful, Father," Aaron said coolly, "or I'll have to report your insubordination for a comment like that." Aaron took on a dignified stride as he made his way through the tiny kitchen to the even tinier bedroom that he no longer had to share. It's true, he thought. Enough mourning. Alex has likely been eliminated by now. The twinge in his gut was soon dulled by thoughts of his now secured future and a tiny surge of power. He was Aaron Stowe, the wanted, and he had a lot more to prove than most. Having been born of two necessaries, not to mention overcoming the stigma of a worthless twin brother, it was, Aaron knew, a huge accomplishment to have made it to the top like this. By the way, guys, I hope you're enjoying the book and how I'm reading. Okay, I'm back to reading now. He began to pack his suitcase, a satisfied feeling growing inside him. For tonight would be his last night living with his necessary parents. Tomorrow he would go to university to be with the others of his elevated status. Okay, guys, I'm going to be stopping here for today. I will put something on maybe later. I might be reading a little later. I hope you found this book super interesting. Well, bye, guys.